Hey guys, picture this. You wake up shivering in a Viking longhouse, the wind howling like a wolf outside, and the smell of damp wool and smoked fish smacking you like a frozen oar. You're no warrior, no chieftain, just a trader, about to sail a creaky longboat across a sea that wants you dead. Think you'd survive a single day in the brutal world of 9th century Vikings? Spoiler, you wouldn't. The storms, the scurvy, the deals with strangers who'd rather stab you than trade. Good luck. Tonight, we'll dive into the gritty life of a Viking merchant, uncover the fearless tale of a woman who sailed to a new world, and reveal the genius behind those dragon-headed ships. So, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's sail into the cold, unforgiving north. Ready? Here's what's waiting. You're still blinking away the sting of dawn, your breath fogging in the dim chill of the longhouse. That howling wind from last night. It's not just a sound. It's a guest, creeping through the timber walls and turning your bones to ice. You're a Viking trader, not some saga-sung hero, and this is your home. A long, smoky hall of wood and sod that smells like a mix of damp straw, sour milk, and the ghost of every fish ever gutted here. Your bed? A lumpy bench along the wall, stuffed with hay that pokes through your wool blanket like it's plotting mutiny. You roll off it, your back creaking like the ship you'll soon sail, and fumble for your boots, stiff, damp, and probably hosting a family of fleas. Welcome to 9th century Norway, where comfort is just a fairy tale. The fire in the central hearth is barely alive, its embers glowing feebly under a crust of ash. You shuffle over, teeth chattering, and toss in a few sticks, praying they catch before your fingers go numb. Around you, the longhouse stirs. Your cousins are snoring like boars, a child whines for food, and someone's already cursing a spilled ale jug. There's no privacy here. The whole household, maybe 20 souls, lives in this one smoky room, sharing heat, arguments, and lice. You grab a wooden bowl from a shelf, hoping for something warm, but breakfast is grim. A lumpy porridge of barley and oats, studded with bits of dried fish that taste like salty despair. You chew it standing up, the grains grinding against your teeth, and wonder if your stomach will hold this truce. No coffee, no fruit, just a swig of sour buttermilk that curdles your optimism. Your first task is to check your trade goods, stacked in a corner under a sealskin tarp. You've got amber beads, wool cloaks, and a few iron knives. Your life's worth, ready to barter in distant markets. But the cold's got its claws in everything. You notice a crack in one knife's handle, and your heart skips. A bad trade could mean no food for weeks. Outside, the wind roars, and you glimpse the harbor through the door's haze. Your longship bobs like a restless beast, its dragon-headed prow slick with frost. You're supposed to sail today, but the sky's turning gray, promising storms that could splinter your ship like kindling. You're not even out the door yet, and already the north feels like it's sizing you up for a watery grave. So, how do you think you'll fare when you actually hit the sea? You shove open the longhouse door, and the north slaps you with a gust so cold it feels like a personal grudge. The harbor looms ahead, a gray smear of mist and churning waves, where your longship sways like it's daring you to board. That cracked knife handle from this morning? It's still gnawing at your gut, but there's no time to dwell. You've got a trade voyage to survive, and the sea doesn't wait for your nerves. You're a Viking trader in 9th century Norway, and stepping outside means trading the smoky misery of the longhouse for the raw, bone-chilling chaos of the fjord. Your cloak, heavy with last night's drizzle, clings to you like a soggy curse, and your boots squelch in the mud, each step a reminder that dry feet are a luxury you forgot long ago. Down at the dock, the air reeks of tar, seaweed, and the sour sweat of men hauling cargo. Your crew, half a dozen weathered sailors with faces like carved oak, grumble as they load barrels of salted herring and furs onto the longship. You check the rigging, your fingers fumbling with ropes stiff from frost, and pray the sail, patched like a beggar's tunic, holds against the storm brewing on the horizon. The ship's shallow hull, built for speed, creaks under the weight, and you can't shake the thought that one rogue wave could send it, and you, to the bottom of the sea. You bark orders, trying to sound confident, but your voice cracks like the ice underfoot. The crew doesn't care. They're too busy cursing the wind and scanning the cliffs for signs of raiders. Bandits love harbors like this, where a quick ambush can net them your entire season's wealth. You pause to count your goods again, heart sinking as you spot a damp spot on a fur bale. Water could ruin it, and a bad trade means starvation come winter. The sky spits sleet now, stinging your face like tiny knives, and you realize you haven't bathed in weeks. Why bother? The sea's about to douse you in salt and regret. Your teeth, already aching from this morning's gritty porridge, throb in the cold, and you're pretty sure that itch under your tunic is a louse staging a coup. Every trader here knows the risks: storms that swallow ships, deals that turn to daggers, or worse, scurvy creeping in when the only food left is moldy bread. You're not even on the water yet, and the north is already testing you. So, what happens when you finally cast off and face the open sea? You're clinging to the side of the longship, the icy spray of the North Sea clawing at your face like 1,000 tiny daggers. The harbor's gone, swallowed by a fog so thick it feels like the gods are hiding something sinister. That cracked knife handle and damp fur bale from this morning? They're distant worries now, buried under the scream of the wind and the groan of the ship's timbers. You're a Viking trader, and the open sea is your battlefield, but it's not glory waiting out here. It's a storm that could snap your mast like a twig. The longship lurches under your feet, its shallow hull slicing through waves that roar like angry giants, and you're already regretting every choice that led you to this moment. Welcome to the 9th century North Sea, where survival is a coin toss with a very wet loser. Your crew, hunched against the gale, shout over the chaos to tighten ropes and bail water that's sloshing over the deck like an uninvited guest. You grip the oar, your knuckles white, arms burning from the fight against the current. The sail, that patched rag you prayed would hold, flaps wildly, threatening to tear and leave you adrift. There's no cabin, no shelter, just an open deck where you're soaked to the bone, your cloak now a heavy, salty shroud. You're packed in with barrels of herring and furs, praying they stay lashed down, because one loose cast could tip the ship or crush a man. The air stinks of brine, sweat, and fear, and your teeth chatter so hard you're sure one's about to crack. Food. A strip of dried cod, hard as stone, that you gnaw between shivers, washing it down with stale water that tastes like the barrel it's stored in. You squint at the horizon, searching for signs of land, but there's only gray sea, gray sky, gray dread. Navigation's a gamble. No compass, just a sunstone that's useless in this murk, and stars hidden by clouds. You rely on the steersman's gut and the memory of currents, but one wrong turn could land you in hostile waters or a reef that'll gut your ship. The crew's eyes dart to the waves, half expecting raiders or worse. Tales of sea serpents aren't just stories when you're this far from home. Your cargo, your lifeline, is at risk with every pitch of the ship, and a single mistake could mean no trade, no food, no winter. You're barely an hour into the voyage, and the sea's already laughing at your courage. So, what happens when the storm hits full force and you're still miles from shore? The storm hits like a hammer from Thor himself, and you're clinging to the longship's mast, your fingers numb, as waves crash over the deck like they're personal enemies. The fog from an hour ago is gone, replaced by a black sky that spits rain so hard it feels like needles on your skin. You're a Viking trader, not a hero, and right now, the North Sea is reminding you just how small you are. That patch sail you worried about? It's shredding now, flapping like a dying bird, and the longship groans as if it's begging for mercy. Your cargo, those furs, amber, knives, is sliding across the deck, threatening to tip you into the abyss. You're soaked, freezing, and the roar of the storm drowns out everything but the pounding of your heart. This is 9th century seafaring, where the gods decide who lives, and they're not in a generous mood. Your crew scrambles, their faces grim masks of salt and fear, shouting curses you can barely hear. You lunge for a rope, burning your palms as you help tie down a barrel before it smashes someone's skull. The steersman, a grizzled man named Bjorn, wrestles the rudder, his eyes wild as he fights to keep the ship from spinning into the trough of a wave. One wrong move, and you're all kindling for the sea. There's no room for mistakes, but your arms are jelly from rowing, and your boots slip on the slick deck, nearly sending you overboard. You catch yourself, gasping, and taste salt. Sea, sweat, or tears, you can't tell. Food's a memory. That strip of cod you chewed earlier is long gone, and hunger gnaws at you like a rat in your gut. The water casks are leaking, and you're already rationing what's left. You yell at a young crewman, Eirik, to bail faster, but he's trembling, his hands raw and bleeding. You're all in this together, but panic's creeping in, eyes darting, voices cracking. You know the stories. Ships vanishing, crews swallowed by waves, their names forgotten. The longship's shallow hull, built for rivers, wasn't meant for this fury, and every creak feels like a countdown. You glance at your cargo, lashed but battered, and realize even if you survive, a ruined trade could mean starvation back home. Lightning splits the sky, and for a second, you swear you see a serpent's shadow in the waves. Myth or madness, it doesn't matter. The storm's only getting worse, and you're miles from any shore. So, what happens when the sea decides it's not done with you yet? The storm's fury ebbs, leaving you gasping on the longship's sodden deck, your hands raw from ropes and your heart still hammering from the waves that nearly claimed you. The sea's gone quiet, but it's an uneasy truce, like a wolf circling before it lunges. You're a Viking trader, battered but alive. Your cargo of furs and amber somehow still lashed down despite the chaos. The air reeks of salt and splintered wood, and your cloak, heavy as a corpse, clings to your shivering frame. You think the worst is over, until Eirik, the young crewman, points to the horizon. Through the thinning mist, a dark shape looms. Another ship, its sails striped with red, moving fast. Raiders. Your stomach drops like an anchor. This is the 9th century North Sea, where survival means outrunning not just storms, but men who'd kill for your goods. You bark at the crew to ready weapons, your voice hoarse from shouting over the gale. Axes and swords, dull from salt and use, are pulled from under benches, their edges glinting with menace. You fumble for your own blade, a short iron seek strapped to your belt, its handle slick with seawater. Your hands shake, not from cold, but from the sudden truth. You're no warrior, just a trader with a ship full of wealth and a crew too tired to fight. Bjorn, the steersman, squints at the approaching ship, muttering about Danish raiders who've been plaguing these waters. They're fast, ruthless, and don't take prisoners unless they smell profit. Your cargo, those furs, knives, beads, is a beacon, and you know a fight could cost everything, even if you win. The crew's eyes dart between you and the horizon, waiting for orders. You've got seconds to decide: flee and risk being overtaken, or stand and fight with a half-starved, storm-beaten crew. The longship's shallow hull gives you speed, but the raider's ship is lighter, unburdened by trade goods. You glance at your cargo, lashed but battered, and feel the weight of winter hunger if you lose it. The sea's still choppy, tossing your ship like a toy, and the wind stings your face, carrying the faint creak of the raider's rigging. Your teeth ache, your stomach growls, and that louse under your tunic picks now to remind you it's still alive. You're miles from shore, with no allies, no escape, and a ship full of men looking to you for survival. The raiders are closing in, their oars cutting the water like knives. So, what do you do when the blades are drawn and there's nowhere to run? The raider's ship slams into yours, wood screeching like a wounded beast, and you're thrown to the deck, your seeks skittering out of reach. Arrows whistle overhead, thudding into the mast, as the enemy's war cries slice through the sea's restless growl. You're a Viking trader, not a berserker, but the North Sea doesn't care. Those red-striped sails are here for your cargo, and they'll spill your blood to get it. The storm's aftermath left you soaked and shaking. Now, the raiders' blades glint like promises of a very short future. Your longship rocks violently, its shallow hull no match for this chaos, and your furs and amber barrels teeter, one axe swing away from being looted. This is 9th century seafaring, where the line between trader and corpse is as thin as your tattered sail. You scramble for your blade, heart pounding, as Bjorn roars to form a shield wall. Your crew, half-starved and battered, lock shields, their faces carved with grim resolve. You wedge in, your shoulders screaming, gripping a borrowed axe that feels too heavy for your trader's hands. The raiders leap aboard, their boots thudding like thunder, eyes wild with greed. Steel clashes, and you swing blindly, your blade biting air as a raider's spear grazes your arm, hot blood mixing with cold seawater. Eirik, The young crewman stumbles beside you, an arrow in his thigh, his scream drowned by the melee. You shove him behind a barrel, your cargo now a makeshift barricade. But it's a losing fight. There are too many, and your crew's too worn from the storm. The raiders swarm your longship like wolves on a wounded elk, and you're staggering across the blood-slicked deck, your axe useless against their tide. A raider's blade flashes, and you duck, but not fast enough. A gash opens on your shoulder, hot pain searing through the cold. You're a Viking trader, not a warrior, and the North Seas turned your ship into a slaughterhouse. The shield wall's broken, Irik's down, and Bjorn's fighting two men, his face a mask of blood and fury. Your cargo, furs, amber, knives, is half-looted, barrels smashed or sinking into the waves like your hopes for winter survival. The ship lists hard, groaning as water pours through a splintered hull. This is 9th century chaos, where the sea takes what the swords don't, and you're one breath from losing everything. You lunge for a rope, trying to cut the raiders' grappling hooks, but your hands slip, raw and bleeding. A raider kicks you down, his boot crushing your ribs, and you gasp, tasting iron and salt. You crawl behind a crate, your last amber stash, and shove it toward the stern, praying it stays hidden. The raiders, drunk on victory, haul off what they can, their laughter sharp as their blades. Bjorn falls, his axe clattering, and the crew's screams fade into the sea's indifferent roar. You grab a broken oar, swinging wildly to keep a raider at bay, but it's pointless. They're leaving, their ship heavy with your stolen goods. Your longship's a wreck, mast cracked, sail gone, and water sloshing at your knees. You're alive, barely, but half your crew isn't, and your cargo's mostly fish food. You slump against the splintered rail, your shoulder throbbing, hunger clawing your gut, and that cursed louse still itching like it's celebrating your defeat. The sea's calmer now, mocking you with its glassy surface, but you're adrift, miles from land, with no food, little water, and a ship that's more sieve than vessel. You kick a shattered barrel, its furs sodden and useless, and feel the weight of failure. Your family's faces flash in your mind, their hunger looming if you don't make it back. The surviving crew, pale and shaking, look to you, but you've got no answers, just exhaustion and a leaking hull. The wind picks up, cold as a grave, and you squint at the horizon, wondering if you'll ever see shore. You're not a trader anymore. You're a survivor, and the North doesn't care. So, what do you do when you're adrift, broken, and the gods seem to have bet against you? You're slumped on the shattered deck of your longship, the sea lapping at your boots like it's tasting you for dinner. The raiders are gone, their red-striped sail a cruel speck on the horizon, but they've left you with a broken ship, a dead crew, and a cargo that's more memory than merchandise. You're a Viking trader, or what's left of one, adrift in the 9th century North Sea, where the wind cuts like a knife and hope feels like a bad joke. Your shoulder throbs from the raider's gash, your ribs ache from that boot to the chest, and your stomach's so empty it's practically singing sagas of its own. The ship's hull leaks like a sieve, and the mast, cracked like your spirit, sways with every wave. This isn't trading anymore. It's a slow dance with death, and you're out of steps. You drag yourself to the rudder, your hands blistered and bloody, and try to steer, but the ship responds like a drunk ox, sluggish and defiant. The surviving crew, 3 men, pale as ghosts, stare blankly, their eyes hollow from loss and cold. You ration the last water, a few sips from a cracked cask that tastes like despair, and pass around a moldy scrap of bread, too hard to chew, but too precious to spit out. Hunger's a blade in your gut, and the cold's worse, seeping into your bones until you can't tell where you end and the sea begins. You squint at the sky, praying for stars to guide you, but clouds blanket the world, and your sunstone's useless in this gloom. Land could be 10 miles or 10 days away, and you're gambling with a ship that's half sunk and a crew that's half dead. You kick at a sodden fur, its amber beads glinting mockingly in the dim light. Your last trade goods, worth nothing if you don't reach shore. The sea's quiet now, but it's a liar, whispering promises of calm before the next storm. Your teeth chatter, one loose from the fight, and that louse under your tunic is still there, thriving in your misery like it's on holiday. You think of home, the longhouse's smoky warmth, your kin waiting for goods that won't come. The crew mutters about Freya, begging her to guide you, but the gods feel as distant as land. You're too tired to shout, too broken to hope, but you keep steering because stopping means sinking. The horizon's a gray line, empty but taunting, and you wonder if you'll ever see it break into land. So, what do you do when you're lost at sea, with no stars, no strength, and a ship that's giving up? You're hunched over the longship's rudder, your vision blurring as the cold gnaws your bones like a starving dog. The sea stretches endless, a gray mirror mocking your drift, and your ship's more coffin than vessel now, leaking with every sluggish wave. You're a Viking trader, or what's left after storms, raiders, and a crew cut to 3 shivering souls. Your shoulder's a throbbing mess, the gash from the raid crusted with salt and pus. Your gums bleed when you cough, a sour tang of scurvy creeping in from weeks of moldy bread and no fruit. Hunger's a dull ache, your stomach long past complaining, and that louse under your tunic still there, probably the only thing thriving. This is the 9th century North Sea, where death comes slow, wrapped in frost and despair, and you're running out of time to outrun it. You force your eyes open, scanning the horizon for land, but it's just sea, sky, and the faint hum of your crew's prayers to Freya. The last water's gone, your throat raw as sandpaper, and the bread's dust now, too moldy even for desperation. You try to steer, but your arms tremble, blistered hands barely gripping the splintered wood. One crewman, Leaf, slumps against the mast, his coughs wet and ragged. Pneumonia, maybe, or just the sea claiming him early. You mutter encouragement, your voice a ghost, but his eyes are dull, fixed on nothing. The other 2 bail water, their movements slow, like men already half buried. The ship's hull groans, water sloshing higher, and you know it won't last another day. Your cargo's gone, save a few amber beads clutched in your pouch. Useless trinkets if you don't reach shore. The wind shifts, colder now, and you shiver so hard your loose tooth rattles. You think of home, the longhouse's smoky hearth, your kin waiting for goods you'll never bring. Guilt stabs deeper than hunger, their faces haunting you as the clouds part, revealing a faint star. You grab the sunstone, hands shaking, and hold it to the light, praying for a bearing. It glints, a weak promise, but it's something, maybe lands closer than you think. You adjust the rudder, ignoring the fire in your shoulder, and urge the crew to row, though their oars barely dip. The sea's quiet, but it's a liar, and you feel its weight, ready to swallow you whole. You're not a trader now, just a man begging for one more dawn. So, what happens when you spot a shadow on the horizon? Is it land, or just another trick of the cruel north? You're gripping the rudder, eyes stinging as a faint line breaks the horizon. Land, at last, or so you pray. The North Sea's cruel tricks have burned you before, but this shadow feels real, a jagged coast under a sky bruised with dawn. You're a Viking trader, barely alive after storms, raiders, and scurvy's slow gnaw. Your longship's a floating wreck, water sloshing at your shins, and your crew, 2 men now, Leaf's coughs silenced by the cold, are ghosts of themselves, rowing with arms like brittle twigs. Your shoulders a fire of pain, your gums bleed with every breath, and hunger's carved you hollow. The amber beads in your pouch, your last trade goods, clink faintly, a mocking reminder of the wealth you've lost. This is the 9th century sea, where hope is a fragile spark, and the North loves to snuff it out. You shout, voice cracking, urging the crew to row harder, but their oars scrape weakly, splashing more than pulling. The land grows closer, cliffs looming like silent judges, but the sea's not done with you yet. A low grinding hums beneath the hull, reefs, hidden like knives under the waves, ready to gut your ship. You steer frantically, hands blistered, but the current's strong, dragging you toward the rocks. The air smells of kelp and salt, thick with the promise of shore, but also danger. Smoke curls faintly from the cliffs, a sign of people. Friends or foes? You've heard of tribes here, wary of strangers, quick to loose arrows at tattered ships like yours. Your Sikhs, dulled from the raid, hangs at your belt, useless against a mob. The crew's eyes, wide with fear and fever, beg for orders, but you're as lost as they are. You lean into the rudder, ignoring the scream in your shoulder, and aim for a narrow channel, praying it's deep enough. The ship shudders, scraping stone, and water surges higher, soaking your last amber pouch. You curse, teeth rattling. One's gone now, lost to scurvy's rot. And that louse under your tunic, somehow still alive, itches like a final insult. The cliffs tower above, smoke thickening, and you spot figures moving, their shapes blurred but armed. Your heart races, torn between relief and dread. Land means survival, maybe trade, but also spears if these locals see you as prey. You're too weak to fight, too starved to flee, and your ship's one wave from splitting apart. The channel narrows, rocks closing in, and the figures on the cliff raise bows. So, what do you do when land's in sight? But it might be your grave. You made it, barely. Your longship, more driftwood than vessel, scrapes onto a rocky shore, the cliffs above silent, their smoke trails gone. You're a Viking trader, broken, bleeding, with only a handful of amber beads left from a cargo that once promised wealth. Your crew's down to 2, their faces etched with frost and loss, but you're alive, defying the North Sea's hunger. Your shoulders a ruin, your gums weep blood, and that louse under your tunic? It's probably planning a saga about your suffering. You collapse on the pebbles, the cold earth a strange comfort, and realize you wouldn't have lasted a day as a Viking trader. Not you, not most of us. Yet they did. People like Gudrid Thorbjarnardóttir, a woman who sailed past storms and raiders to reach Vinland, a new world, centuries before Columbus. Her courage, like yours in this tale, wasn't about glory. It was about enduring, one brutal day at a time. The Vikings built ships that danced on waves, read stars without maps, and faced seas that swallowed lesser souls. They traded, fought, and survived, not because they were fearless, but because they had no choice. You'd trade your smartphone for a hot meal right now, but they carved a world that still echoes in our ports and stories. So, as you drift off tonight, think of Gudrid, of those amber beads, of a sea that tests but never forgets. If this tale of grit and survival stirred something in you, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's keep sailing through history together. Comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it? Maybe you're in a cozy bed, far from the North Spite, but tell us anyway. And if you felt the cold of that longship, share this with someone who'd brave the sea with you. The Viking story isn't done. Next time, we'll face another day, another world, tougher than you can imagine. Sleep tight and dream of land.